guys, it's Matt from Landsiedel Fitness. I am here today to talk to you about the deadlift. So we're going to go through three things here. We're going to talk about the setup of the deadlift. We're going to talk about the execution of the deadlift, and then I'm going to wrap up the video talking a little bit about some cues and common mistakes that we see in the gym that people make with the deadlift. So one of the first things that I want to talk to you guys about is the shoe of choice that you're going to use for the deadlift. So we want to make sure that the shoe that you're going to be choosing is going to have a low profile. Okay, or barefoot, it might be even better for some people if you can get away with that at the gym that you're at. We want to make sure that you have no elevation in the heel, okay? With the deadlift, it is posterior chain dominant, so back dominant, so we want to make sure that we're able to drive our heels down and coming down in like that. So when we're driving our heels down, if we have elevated toes, when we're going to drive down, we're going to be putting more load in the front end of our body, okay? So we want to make sure that we have really nice low profile feet, okay? Harder soles, even better. So try and stay away from running shoes, sneakers, anything like that when you're doing your deadlifts. So we want to make sure that we have a slight turnout in the feet when we're going to be starting our deadlift. So we're going to have our feet turned out just slightly. We don't want to be too forward with our foot, otherwise we're going to end up pulling on different areas of the body that's not going to be beneficial to us. So slight turnout. We want to make sure we approach the bar so it is basically touching our shin, okay? Shins are going to stay at a 90 degree. So when we come down, shins are going to be nice and 90, okay? What is right above the bar is going to be our scapula, okay? So right here is going to be right above the bar. So that's how we know we're going to be set up properly. Moving straight in, scapula right above the bar. The next thing to be mindful of when we are setting up is that we are taking the tension out of the bar by engaging our lats, okay? So you don't want to be jerking the weight up like this. You want to pull the tension out just like that, and you want to engage the lats, and then you're going to follow through with the movement, okay? So the last thing you want to be mindful of with the setup is your breath. Okay, so breath is very important in exercise, we know that. So when we are getting ready to engage in the movement, we want to fill our diaphragm with air to help support our abdominal belt. We also want to make sure that the neck is not up like this, okay? You're hyperextending the neck. We want to finish in this position, okay? So starting position is always going to be neutral neck, and we finish with our face like this, okay? So we're keeping our body nice and in line and in a neutral spinal position. Okay, so now let's talk a bit about execution. So the execution of the deadlift, we always want to start by getting close to the bar, okay? We are going to have our shins at 90 degrees, okay? We're going to sit back into it, and we're going to have our scapula right over top of the bar, okay? One of the things we want to make sure we're doing is we're pushing the floor away from us, okay? So we're driving up just kind of like in a leg press, right? We're going to be pushing the pad away from us. We're going to be pretending the ground is the panel on the leg press. We're just going to be pushing away. We want to make sure that when we come up, we're going to not hyperextend our back, okay? That's something that you want to be mindful of. We don't want to be hyperextending like this. We want to be in a nice neutral pelvic position at the top of the movement, okay? That would essentially be called the lockout of the movement. So you're going to notice when I deadlift, you're going to see the movement of the hips is in this plane, okay? We're going to be moving like this, okay? The movement of the bar is straight up and down. So the one thing you need to be mindful of when you're doing this movement is the bar stays as close to you as possible, and it's going to travel directly in this line. What happens when I deadlift like this and I'm too far out and I come up, right? All of the load has just loaded into my lower back. So when I bring the bar right close in and flatten my back, come up, drive, all of the tension is just transferred into the hip, okay? It's not in the lower back. So hip and core is predominantly where you want to be feeling this movement, and also the back, depending on how you perform the movement. Okay, so as soon as the bar leaves the ground, what I'm going to do is I'm going to squeeze my glutes and transfer my hips forward, okay? I'm not hyperextending like this. I'm in a nice neutral position, and in order to offload the weight, we want to unsqueeze the glutes, and we want to dump the hips back, okay? So another thing to be mindful of too is that we're not sitting into dipping the hips. Okay, when we dip the hips and we come up, it's now transferred into more of a squat. So it's kind of like a deadlift, half squat. So we want to make sure the hips are remaining high, bar close in, up. So I have 8 cues that I want you to follow when performing the deadlift, okay? So we're gonna run through these 8 cues right now. Starting with the first one, we wanna make sure that the back remains flat throughout the entire movement, okay? We don't want any rounding in the lumbar spine. People tend to compensate and use the lumbar spine to get strength. This is something we wanna avoid, okay? So we want to bring the bar in nice and tight. We're gonna have our hips high, back and is flat, shoulders are pulled back, lats are engaged, okay? Driving up and down and up and down. So the second cue I have for you guys is we want to make sure that the bar stays nice and tight into the shins, okay? So we're going to keep the bar nice and tight in, and we're going to drive the bar straight up and along the body, and you clear the knees. The reason why we're doing this is because if the bar travels out here and we're pulling like this, you're loading everything into your lower back. We want to avoid that. The third cue, the bar is going to travel straight up and down, okay? So exactly like what I just built off of what I just said, we want to make sure the bar is traveling like this and not out and then in like that, okay? So the fourth cue we have for you guys is engaging the lats. So we want to take all the slack out of the bar and bring tension into the lats before we pull. So we're down like this. So this would be the opposite of what I want you to do. Jerking, like that, okay? So we want to make sure we pull up. You'll hear a click in the bar, okay? Load the lats by pulling your hands back and in, and then you're going to drive up. So my lats are engaged the whole movement. So the fifth cue I have for you guys is the hip plane that we're going to be moving in. So hips, this is a hip dominant movement when we're doing the deadlift, right? So we're going to be traveling like this, okay? So when we're deadlifting, I'm constantly thinking of driving my hips forward, driving my hips back. So the sixth cue I have for you guys is to not lock your knees out too early. So by that I mean when we're coming down into the movement and our hips are high, we go to clear. If I lock my knees out like that, I'm pulling with my lower back. So we want to stay to about here. We clear the knees, we lock the knees out at the top. Okay, so wait till you clear the knees, right about here, and then we go into a locked out position by pulling the glutes into our body. All right, so the seventh cue I have for you guys is to not dip your hips in the movement, okay? This is not a squat. We want to keep the hips nice and high when we're doing this, okay? So by this, I mean keeping the hips like this. We're not in the starting position. We're not sitting down into it to pull up, okay? That's the mechanics of a squat, okay? So hips remain high, and I pull with the glutes and the hips as they move in and the glutes move into the body. And the last cue I have for you guys is to be mindful of the touch and go process that people use at the gym. I'm a huge supporter of using good form with the deadlift. It's essential to prevent injury and to get nice muscular gains. So we want to make sure, especially if we're lifting heavy, if you're lifting lighter, it tends to not be as big of a deal, but we want to avoid this. Just dumping and moving right back into it again. Your form will become compromised. So what I want you guys to do is come down, set the bar down, re-engage lats, pull up. So I always use my lats re-engaging as a way to kind of get my grip back and to keep my form nice and strong. So there you have it. Those are my 8 cues to make sure that you're deadlifting properly at the gym. Go get them.